Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Joyfully Imperfect for Highly Driven Women. I'm your host, Yukti Rao, and today is April 14th, 2023. I'm recording this episode today in honor of my dad's memory, my papa's memory. That's what I used to call him. It's been 2 years since he passed, so it's a very personal episode for me. At the same time, I know we all have um, people we've lost and loved, and people we've lost. You may have lost a dad in a different way, not through death, but through other means, and we feel that loss no matter what. So I hope in some way or form this will support you as well through your grief, through your remembrance, through your loss. Um, Today, I actually want to just start by remembering my papa. Okay, I was a daddy's little girl. I won't lie. I He doted on me, and I adored my dad. He So when he passed, it was a big shift in my foundation because it was like losing a safety net. Like really, and I did not even recognize. I mean, I've lived longer in this country in the US than I've been in India. I've been out of my house since I was 18, so a good 30 years now. So you would think that as an independent, strong woman who's been out of the house and away from home for so many years, uh, that wouldn't be the case. But interestingly, losing any of your parents does create a shift in your foundation, and you even feel it physically. Now, some of us don't actually observe it, but in my case, it was very easy for me to observe it. Um, Firstly, losing him was a bit of a shock because it just happened very quickly in 2 days during COVID times. So India was in lockdown. I could not even go back to see him, so there was this feeling of not getting full closure as well at that time. So it was his loss was jarring. I won't lie, it was jarring. And initially it was very the first call, I think, was more traumatic than anything else, and I had to um feel that in my nervous system and in my body 3 days ago, just as it happened 2 years ago. The interesting thing is when you feel your nervous system allows the old trauma to re-emerge and come out into your body, and you let yourself feel, emote, and work through it, and then let it go, that is when you truly start to heal and let it go. And I feel like that was transformative for me. I still miss him and I still feel his loss and things. But over the 2 years, now I'm beginning to remember the things that I really loved about him, the things that remind me of him on a daily basis. Like my kids, for example, uh, my son and my daughter in little things, how they behave, how they do things. Myself, my love for food comes from him. My love for travel was something he definitely harnessed and kind of grew because he loved traveling as well, and so many other things. So, in memory of my papa, I'll share a little bit about him today. And some of it will resonate, some of it may not, and it's okay. Just come along for the journey. Born a daddy's girl, I was loved and adored by my papa. I had a great relationship with him as a child. In fact, I wanted to be just like him. I think that's part of the reason I became an engineer because he was one. I was good at math and physics, and It seemed the obvious choice. And if you grew up in India, you'll realize that maybe even here, when I grew up in India, if you were a good student, you had three choices: become an engineer, lawyer, or a doctor. So, anyway, so that's the path I chose because I was daddy's girl and interestingly, I made a lot of choices uh, early in my life and made a lot of decisions because I wanted to be like my baba. Food for thought. Because a lot of us made decisions and choices and are still living with it like they were our decisions and choices when they were very conditioned by the people around us and even the society around us. So, I'd like you to take a moment and think about who in your life had that kind of influence on you, like my papa did on me. Who was the person you looked up to? Who was the person you wanted to be like? And how much did you emulate them? So much so that maybe they're parts of you that you changed to be like them. After this podcast, take a moment, sit and think about it, write about it, because this is actually an important time to ponder. Because as you grow older, you start to re emerge as your own person again, not the daughter your papa wanted, not the daughter your mom wanted, or the wife, or the kids, or the mother, or your kids wanted or needed. You actually reach a point in your life where you start to really emerge into who you are. And at that time, that's the time to reflect back and see which parts of you are truly you and which parts of you picked up from others because that is what either you wanted, you had a story or belief around it, or you were told and expected to do that, so you did that. So I invite you to do that. Um, because when I look back, I recognize that many of my choices in life, like becoming an engineer or even coming to this country, were very influenced by my papa. Um, do I regret doing that? No, I own it. And I'm not a victim to it either because that's how my life turned out. But at the same time, it's important to recognize it. So moving forward, you make your choices not based on old beliefs. Not based on what you decided when you were 3 years old or 7 years old, but actually as an adult now, however old you are right now. And there's a part of us that's still making decisions and choices based on decisions and choices and stories. And we decided at that young age. Basically, your 7 year old is running your life in some ways. Isn't that funny? But it's so true. So pay attention to that. I'm going to pause and take a sip of my tea. I have a bad cold thanks to this allergy season. But so today, as I remember my papa, I want you to think about the person who influenced you and who loved you. Maybe it was your dad, maybe it wasn't. And if it was, be grateful for them. And also try to separate who you are from who they were. My papa was a very loving and generous man. He's very loving towards his family. His family came first. He was also very generous towards people, anybody who asked for help. He had a big heart. Um, he had a big heart, which also got hurt a lot because people used the fact that he had a big heart. And he struggled with setting boundaries with people. So that was one of his Achilles heels. And I've recognized that over time. He's definitely had trouble setting boundaries with me. But he also had trouble setting boundaries with other people. And that often caused the pain because he didn't have the discernment as to when and who to say yes or no to early in life. And over time, what happened is that that hurt started dictating who, where he said yes or no to. And that was an important lesson for me to watch him, because even through all that, though, he never lost his loving heart and generosity. But it was important to recognize that you can be loving and generous, and yet you need to have discernment. And then you have a choice. You can either still stay open hearted, or you can close down. And often, what happens is when you are open hearted, loving, and generous, and you get hurt and taken advantage of or used again and again, it causes your heart to break. And when your heart breaks, you, most of us humans, actually deal with it by shutting it down, by putting on armor around it. So we don't let people in. And then we think people don't want us because we are not actually letting them in. It's a chicken and egg problem. We want people in, but we won't let them in, and we push them away in some way, and then we think they are not letting us in, and so on and forth. The cycle continues. So it was a very important lesson for me in life, watching my papa. And I did some of that stuff. I put on the armor because I didn't want to get hurt like he did. It's now that I actually am more, I think, becoming more open-hearted and open-minded. Because guess what? When you shut down your heart and you can't love fully, you don't receive love fully either. And when you don't receive love fully, you always feel like something's missing. And over time, if you can't love, then you can't feel other joyful, purposeful re- emotions either. And that actually happened to me a lot. Over time, I became numb to anything but, say, anger or just irritation, because I had closed my heart out. And as I became more open hearted and open minded, both, it became easier for me to be more generous, more loving, and yet more discerning. So that's the lesson I learned, one of the key lessons I learned from my papa. But I also learned how important love and generosity is, how important it is to be generous to other people, people who are not as fortunate as you, because there's always going, no matter how hard your life is, there's always going to be somebody who is maybe less fortunate with you. They may have more money than you, but they may not have as much love as you. You or they may have maybe surrounded by people who love them, but they have financial hardship. So there's always some reason to actually be grateful for what you have in life. So that is the other thing, being generous with people and being grateful for what you have. These are two very valuable things my papa taught me. Lessons I sometimes forget and forgot. But over the years, more and more, it's been reinforced how important it is. Because the more open hearted and open minded you can be, the easier your life gets. Because you're not constantly looking to blame somebody else. You're not playing the victim. You no longer are in the place where somebody else, you've given your power to somebody else. When you're grateful and generous and discerning, don't forget that part, uh, you have the ability to actually share. Um, you have the ability to express. You have the ability to set boundaries and yet be open. All of it, all at once. So these are some of as I look back on my memories of my papa, I still remember these things like his love and generosity, not just towards me, but towards others. This other thing I remember most about him is how playful and childlike he was. He was fun. My dad was a fun dad. Um, so when he came home in the evenings, often in the summer, we would go out for ice cream every now and then and go for a drive, or he'd just play with us. And even as he grew older and things got harder for him, his health deteriorated, he couldn't move around as much. That sparkle in his eyes of the naughty child never went away. My kids, when I talk to them about my papa today, they still remember the tricks and pranks he played behind my mom's back while they were there. They still remember those things about him, or his love for food, or how he made them laugh with little things. He could just relate to them at a different level altogether because the child in him was very much alive. And that is one of the things I learned from my dad. And it's so important to have that childlike space in yourself because that child in you, that magical child, teaches you how to play, how to be curious, how to actually enjoy life, how to find, I mean, really juice the joy in your life. If you pay attention to children, they are not worried about doing things perfectly. They just feel emotions, feel it, let it go. Feel it, let it go. Whether it be sorrow, whether it be joy, that's whether it's just playing, we can learn so much from them because they have not yet put up all the stories and barriers and beliefs that we have over a period of time. So you can actually see the purity of how life is with a child, especially a baby, right? So there was this part of my dad, and he really loved to play, and he taught us how to play. I mean, I don't remember my dad ever getting upset because I loved playing in the mud, and I did. Or I loved dancing in the summer rain. In India, we have summer rain. I love dancing in the summer rain. Even now, I love dancing in the rain. I will even go out and dance in the winter rain sometimes here because we don't get a lot of summer rain, at least in California. So I still remember that childlike. And like I said, his grandchildren still remember that as well. So that childlike play is so important and such an important part of our lives. And that was such a valuable lesson my dad taught me. The other thing was humor. He was humorous. Um, he and my mom fought a lot. But and he maybe she was the one person he couldn't always be humorous with, but he would still pull her leg and he would still like poke her from the back a little. Not always kindly, honestly, but he had this ability to laugh at things and to share that laughter. So that's the other thing I remember about my papa. Um, and our relationship evolved, and this may resonate with some of you. Our relationship evolved a lot over the years. I've been very fortunate that the men in my life, um, starting with my papa especially, have been people who've always made me feel loved. Um, I always knew he was the one person I felt like would love me no matter what, right from beginning. Like if I failed in an exam, if I killed someone, if something I did something even to hurt and disappoint him, he would still love me. And yes, I disappointed him at times, and I was disappointed by him at times because getting disappointed and being disappointed is a very human experience. We all feel disappointment at times, and we all disappoint other people at times. There was a period of time when I went through it, I didn't want to disappoint my kids at all. And guess what happens when you don't want to disappoint them? You can't set boundaries. So it's so important to allow yourself the space to be a disappointment and be disappointed. Guess what? So he was one person I always felt would love me no matter what. I always felt safe with him. So losing him was really a big shift in my foundation because while I've been learning about self-love and loving myself over the last 2 years, I really had to embrace this part of me and really shower that love, safety, and create that foundation for myself that I had always relied on my papa for. So it even in his loss, he gave me so many blessings because he really taught me how to love myself and also create that safety and security within myself. Like, it was like I had to lay down a new foundation after he left. And that is also a gift the parents give their kids by stepping out of their way, by allowing them to be their person. I have two teenagers, and my daughter leaves home next year. And that's an important lesson, like the letting go, because the grief doesn't come just when you let go when the person dies, like I felt with my papa's passing. Grief is there when your children go through stages and different phases, and you have to let go of the little baby becoming a toddler. You have to let go of the toddler becoming a child becoming a preteen, becoming a teenager, and then a teenager leaving home, becoming a young adult, and then having their own family. At every stage with our kids, you let go. And that is one thing I watched my papa do very gracefully. He let me leave home at 18 to go study. He helped me go to engineering school. Even through whatever hardship, he tried his best to provide as much as he could for me. Um, and now that when my daughter's ready to leave, I realize how hard it must have been for my parents to let an 18-year-old go on her own to a city far, far away. Like it would take us 3 days by train to travel. And even if we took a flight, it would still be like a day with the flight and the bus for us to even get to my college from my hometown, which was Delhi. I was born in Delhi and I studied in a place called Manipal down south of India. But it was the most formative and amazing experience of my life. And I'm very grateful to my papa, actually, both my parents, for creating that in my life because I grew so much. I opened up so much by going so far away from home. And I take that lesson forward with me, with my daughter. And as she gets ready to launch, I every day I step out of her way a little by little, give her so she has wings to fly. At the same time, I am still there, her safety net. So when she falls, I can hold her. But some falls, you have to let them fall and get up themselves. Others, you will have to be there for them. And that's the lesson I learned from my papa. He was always there for me. But when I went through heartbreak, when I went through disappointment, when I went through failure, when things got hard, he didn't always try to rescue me. It was hard on him. It hurt his heart to see me like that, but he didn't always try to rescue me. He let me figure it out myself. He let me fall and get up. Um, he was always there for me to talk to, but he let me do that. And as I grew older and more independent, at 21, I came to this country. Um, our relationship evolved and changed because we had been so close growing up. Over time, as I grew older, we drifted apart a little. I mean, I always loved him, but our life took different tangents. He had my brother and sister at home still, especially my brother who's much younger, and their relationship grew. And I have to say, there were times when I was envious of their relationship because they grew so close, but I was no longer there. And since I'm being really honest on this podcast, I would say that one of the hardest things was because in India, a boy child is valued more than a girl child because a boy is expected to take care of his parents as they grow older because he stays usually with their parents, which is a very cultural thing. Doesn't always happen here in the US, but it's a very cultural thing in India. Uh, so the responsibility and ultimately the focus of how my of the business and his life became more on my brother just because he was the son. And that was very hard for me to take. That was something that I had to work through my stories and throughout my life. In fact, because I wanted to be like my papa, and because sons are considered so important in India, I actually adapted a very masculine style in the sense I so we all have masculine and feminine energy, all of us, men, women, whatever. And I'll do a different podcast episode on that. But I leaned more towards the masculine energy, letting go of the feminine energy, which is so important because it's the flow, it's the ease, it's the play, it's the grace, it's the receiving. It I became more about the chasing and the pushing and the driving and ideally you have to find harmony between the two, have some balance. And that was something that I learned later in life. But l- as I'm sharing this, I want you to think about it a little bit, right? The reason I'm sharing it is because it's my life, but also what was some of the choices and decisions that influenced your life that made you become the person you have become or you had become? Because um, as highly driven women or people, usually you are very much in your masculine energy. It comes very easily to you. It's the feminine, the being, the receiving, the allowing that is harder. So that is something I had to learn later on in life. I'm still learning. You need both, and you need both in a very integrated form. If you sit in one for too long and not the other, then you are, it doesn't really serve you. So I'm just, and I'll share more about that in my next episode actually. But that was one of the things that our relationship evolved and changed. And then as I got, so his focus became more on my son, on his son and the kids that were home. And I started building my own life in a different country. I met my husband. I started my own family. But we always had a special bond, always. And I could see sometimes the how hard it was for him to let go, but he always did. He stepped out of the way, and I had to do the same thing with him because I struggled with his not taking good enough care of his health and stuff. And we had moments where we disagreed about it. And when my dad disagreed, he just didn't say anything about it. He just didn't listen to you. That was his way. And when I disagree vocally. So that was a difference in style. And over time, I got busy with my kids. We drifted apart in the sense that we didn't talk all the time, but we always have had that connection. We still have that connection, by the way. And then as the kids got older, I started talking to him more. As we both started, we started talking more about philosophy and psychology. And um, as I went through my growth in my connection with Source and Universe, that became a common thread for us to talk about as well. And our relationship evolved. It was always going to be father and daughter, but now it was no longer a daughter who was like relying on a father. It was more like we were more like on an equal lane, being able to talk and discuss things. And miss that because it's not, neither of us was good at talking on the phone and we are thousands of miles apart. So we talked sometimes on the phone, and most of our talks really happened when I went to India twice a year. I mean, once in 2 years or once a year. But that time was precious and well spent, and I still remember it. And I'm so grateful to have had that relationship. And I think that is one of the things that I learned from my dad was how to go from being a papa who takes care of everything to being more of a peer and a friend. Not many people have that relationship with their fathers, but I was fortunate enough to do that. Partly because my father let it, like he allowed himself to grow through it. So, yeah, as I'm sitting here remembering my papa with you guys, I'm also sharing some of the key qualities that I loved about him. Um, and there were things I did not like about him also. Honestly, I don't put him on a pedestal anymore, but I love him just the way he was. And I still love him. Um, he's still around me in spirit, and I feel him at times. I know I remember him fondly. I laugh at some of the things that I remember about him. Sometimes I cry too, and I grieve him. But the more I'm able to let it go and allow the grief to surface and let go, the more I'm able to feel joy and love and great and gratitude for all that he offered in my life. Um, so having said that, that was my papa. And I invite you to actually think about, it doesn't have to be a person you've lost, but think about somebody in your life who is that important to you, who has had so much influence on you. Look at how they've influenced you. What are the qualities you loved about them? What are some of the things you embraced about them? And what are some of the things you don't want to embrace about them? Also know that when you, whatever you reject really hard, you're it. It's a reflection in the mirror for you. All right, guys, that's it for today. I will be back next week. I'm going to go spend a little more time with my papa today and honor his memory. I love you. Thank you for listening.